The whiteness concept we've talked about a million times over. When I talk about the etymology of the word cracker, or cracker as like, or not cracker, but instead like whiteness as a social political concept, and its proximity to power and its implication of proximity to power. I'm not saying that specifically to be like, you should say cracker all the time, or that you should constantly fucking tell white people that they suck or whatever. I myself am white. That would get really fucking annoying if people constantly did that shit to me. I'm defending the concepts behind and the historical reasonings as to why there is a difference. The reason why I do this is because if I don't do this, there are plenty of other people on the white identitarian side, right? There are plenty of people on the white identitarian side, i.e. Nazis, that try to utilize moments like this specifically to make counter propaganda. This is why I can't stop defending, not necessarily defending anti-white racism or anything like that, but explaining the concept that anti-white racism or reverse racism is not a valid or real thing. It's like, anti-straight bigotry. Homophobia is real. Heterophobia is not, because heterophobia is considered the default position. Okay? Does that mean you can hurt a white person's feelings? Yeah, of course you can. Does that mean that white people can be oppressed? Of course they can be. There is a layer of intersectionality. They can be oppressed for a multitude of different reasons. Most significantly, though, from their class position. Okay?
Peace. The answer to the part 1 pop quiz question is, the artist is Uncle Kracker, the group is with attitude. Though there's a reason that the group is more widely known and referred to by their acronym, NWA, while to the contrary, in the mainstream, Uncle Kracker is simply known as Uncle Kracker. Because there's no genuine one-to-one comparison between cracker and the N-word. Not etymologically, not historically, not socially, not sincerely. The term cracker is an old Anglo-Saxon word that's been around.
You can't hate the default. That doesn't make sense. No, default implies power. So it doesn't matter if there's any sort of like negativity associated with it. And in many instances, the negativity towards the normative position or the default is criticism towards power. So it's not about criticism towards you specifically, okay? But yes, when you shit on power, it's like saying fuck billionaires. You can't oppress the default on the basis of that default. Exactly. This is a concept that we've talked about so many times. I feel like it's very hard for people to just like hear what I'm saying. Like people just shut off, and I'm trying to be as charitable as possible, right? Hear my words, but you don't listen to what I'm saying.
Around for centuries, published as early as the 1500s in the work of Shakespeare. Its original meaning was one who brags, a bloviator. In today's terms, a capper. Ethnocentrism among the English applied the term cracker to the Scots-Irish people to smear them as raucous and lawless. That stereotype and label would follow the Scots-Irish people to the New World, the Americas, where they took on many manual labor jobs, including drovers,
which, by the way, whiteness from the American perspective, like from the American understanding of whiteness, the Scots-Irish were considered non-white, not a part of the default in-group. They were not white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, which is why when cracker applied to them as a negative slur, it was applied to them on the basis of them not being, I guess, quote unquote, white. When Italians were oppressed in this country, they were not considered white. When the Irish were oppressed in this country, or in the second iteration of the word cracker, when he's describing the etymology of it, they were not white. And when I say white, I mean, we all know that these people had white skin. It's not like these people aren't white, right? And these people are certainly now considered white But that concept has expanded, okay? It has expanded throughout time to welcome other groups that were originally oppressed on the virtue of not being white to now be white. Notice how none of these people were discriminated against on the basis of being white and white alone, in the same way that a black person or a brown person can be discriminated against. That's because whiteness in this regard has very little to do with the color of your skin, unless we're talking about the color of your skin being black, okay? Because if there's one group of people who will never be considered white, it's black people. That's why Barack Obama is not another white president, despite being half white, but considered the first black president. The reason why I have to, I guess, consistently repeat myself on the subject is that it's also a hyper-Americentric conversation to have, because in other countries, there's slurs and pejoratives and arguments that happen and occur on the basis of religious backgrounds, religious sectarianism, ethnocentrism, but rarely ever on the same white versus non-white boundaries that you constantly talk about in the United States of America. It's very interesting. That's why a lot of Europeans will look to this situation and go, what the fuck? Why? They'll say, why are Americans so obsessed with race? Now, of course, this does not mean that there isn't anti-black racism in European countries. Of course there are. But the never-ending argument, the never-ending back and forth between whiteness, what that means, white people, black people, is a profoundly American conversation to have.
Where they took on many manual labor jobs, including drovers, which introduces another connotation to the term cracker as whip cracker, which transfers over to the context of slavery with Scots-Irish participation as slave foremen who cracked the whip. In time, the Scots-Irish people would embrace the term cracker as a thing of pride. Although to northern and affluent whites, the term cracker was a classist smear, the southern crackers themselves embraced the term as a sign of their working class grit. There's even a book about it called Cracker Culture that reveals something that you might find.
That's why people in Florida also call themselves the Florida crackers too.
Surprising. While all poor southern whites were considered crackers, not all crackers were white. That's right. Before the Atlanta Braves, there was the Atlanta Crackers. And alongside the Atlanta Crackers were the Atlanta Black Crackers. And you might argue that was then and this is now. Well, as of now, there's still a Cracker Trail Elementary School in Florida, a school that honors the Cracker Trail landmark in Florida. There's the Cracker Roadshow that again celebrates cracker culture. There's a reason you will not find in this day and age an N-word Trail Elementary School, because the N-word and cracker are not the same. That said, yes.
Well, there is a N-word head ranch though, and everybody understands how fucking profoundly racist that is, because there's no terminology that is like positive. There's no positive association with the N-word in that regard.
Context and connotation can turn even the most benign term into a racial insult. For example, white supremacist appropriation of the word Monday as interchangeable with the N-word. No one would argue that Monday, in and of itself, is racist. It depends on the context of use. Even the mouth-breathing, knuckle-dragging racist, who blew a gasket at my Andy Griffith post and went on a racist tirade. When he came back and posted an unapologetic video, he used the term cracker in his video. At no point in time did he repeat any of the anti-black slurs that he previously had.
Like, that guy's a Nazi, and even he uses the term cracker, but now LSF and like Redditors on specific subreddits have decided to be logically consistent and start saying that like cracker is such a slur, it's such a serious slur, that like they started censoring it, which is hilarious. Okay, you are trying to be more fragile about a white identity that you do not understand than a fucking Nazi, the ultimate white identitarian. Like, Nazis are at the literal last, the final boss of white identity. Okay, straight up. So it's crazy to like turn around and try to censor the word cracker specifically so that you can, get an argument in edgewise. It's a very silly situation. But words are defined socially. And maybe in the future, if there's enough white fragility, people could potentially genuinely create a movement surrounding the censorship of the word cracker. It's laughable. It's hilarious. Okay? But the historical association with the word, the etymology of the word, and the difference of said word or words that pertain to white people will never change. Because those things already happened. Okay?
In the video that he deleted, because even he knows the two are not the same. But I know that nothing that I've said in this video is going to ever satisfy some of you. And quite frankly, I'm good with that. How good? This good.
Good cracker.
We out ya.
Anyway. So yeah. When the goblins go to larger, more popular subreddits and try to spread this message, they get laughed at and told to fuck off, so they return to LSF and adjacent subreddits. Yeah. It's scary. The reason why I consider this to be genuinely threatening and scary is because it's a gateway, an entry point into white identitarian politics. And when you start doing white identitarian politics, you start opening up the door to more white identitarian politics, like the guy that we were talking about here, Nazis. In 2016, or even before that, in the Gamergate era, one of the things that Richard Spencer and the like often utilized was white identitarian politics. This is not a new concept. Historically speaking, white power came after black power. The Klan and other adjacent nationalist fascist movements saw black power and decided to basically market what they were doing in a similar vein. Now, of course, this works well for some people who are either otherwise well-intentioned and don't fully understand it. Play the video? What video? I already played the video. Yeah, All Lives Matter and Thin Blue Line came after Black Lives Matter. We now know and understand that All Lives Matter on its face sounds totally normal, innocuous even. White Lives Matter is the more racist, more transparently racist. No, there is no 30 seconds left. I went back in the video. Anyway. If you check the history of who makes the comments, you've got a 50% chance of finding an out-about race realist. They don't even hide it, and gullible-ass libs just eat it up hook, line, and sinker. Yes. Exactly. A lot of people that are permanently online, extremely online, love to use this as an opportunity to spear dick their narrative. They're much, much worse and much scarier ideas into the fold, into the conversation, as they present it as someone who is simply interested in, stopping people from being mean to one another, stopping people from being racist to one another. Maybe there are some people who also are extremely online who get caught up in that narrative and get caught up in that argument with good intentions without realizing it. But ultimately, there is no difference. White identitarianism, given that whiteness is a socio-political concept created around having power, okay? White identitarianism is no different than just basically being the entry steps, the gateway into, further, more aggressive and scary forms of white identitarianism. Nazi shit. Like I said, though, I understand why XQC specifically, I can't speak on Asman, but I assume Asman has a similar perspective on it as well. But Look. Racism against white people, okie dokie, you slay queen. Racism against black people, how could you? How could you? How much does your house cost again, Hasan? Frat laugh. Yeah. These are always the same kinds of people. They're not interested in like legitimately making the internet a safer space for people. Okay? They're just interested in making an argument so they can basically say the N-word. And if I can't say it, then you can't make fun of white people. If I can't make fun of black people and you consider me to be racist when I do that, then you can't make fun of white people. The whole victim complex of white identitarians and Nazis just melts my brain like you were never a victim, dude. What the fuck? That's not true. That's also not true. Even Nazis, white identitarians at a certain point in time could have been victimized. And white people in general are also capable of being victimized. White people can still be, for example, victims of police brutality. White people, of course, can be victims of unjustifiable constructs, unjustifiable hierarchies, just not on the basis of being white. That's it. You are always going to be structurally fucked over on the virtue of being a worker, a laborer. Your class position is the reason why you get fucked over. Like I said, though, in the conversation that XQC, myself, and Your Rage had, XQC also admitted that the word cracker is not something that offends him as a white person. He understands that it's a silly, laughable concept. In private conversations that we've had, which I also mentioned in that conversation, so I'm, I don't feel bad revealing it one more time or describing it one more time. He understands, just like he doesn't use the R word, for example. XQC does not use the R word. He understands that allowing it to continue or advocating for it, advocating to say it, will create an unsafe space and will make it seem like you can just go balls to the wall. Okay? The R word, lemafeao. Well, yes. Problem is that any racial insults and hatred will ultimately create more hatred and division. Isn't it better to speak out against hatred across the board while acknowledging that certain types are more harmful than others? Well, here's the issue. When I talk about the word cracker, I talk about it from the context of historical white supremacy and its contemporary implications. Okay? I am not going to concede or capitulate to people who are making a silly argument saying that their feelings are hurt. Because those people will be quick to say, well, what about black people? When you say anti-black things, you're hurting their feelings, but you care about their feelings. It seems like you don't care about white people's feelings. And that is either a deliberate misdirection or in the most charitable way, in the most charitable interpretation, that is someone who doesn't get it. Okay? No one is making that argument. The argument being made is permitting racism is wrong despite the impact. Yes, I understand why content creators take a stance on this. I understand why content creators don't want people to just like fucking constantly spam cracker in their chats. Okay? I get that. But that logic does not apply. To words like Karen, redneck, hillbilly, honky, and numerous other anti-white words. A lot of those words also are not on the virtue of whiteness, but usually whiteness plus class. Or an action, a type of behavior. Okay? The way I see it, I, as a white person who also appreciates humor and who thinks that, we shouldn't be so aggressive in our understanding of comedy. I, as a white person who regularly yell at chatters. Oh, look at that hill, a dead Hasan. Yeah, I know. I'm so dead. I know. It's interesting that people say this, and yet I am still alive. Do you want to know why? It's the very same reason that this, no matter how much people try to fucking claim that anti-white racism is completely unacceptable, completely crazy, or whatever the fuck, a Nabisco-owned brand like Wheat Thins can make like a marketing campaign around it and send me a cracker pass. Because everyone understands that this is a laughable concept. The only people that don't understand that this is a laughable concept, or the people that take this seriously, are unfortunately people who are either brain broken from the circles that they engage with on the internet, or people who are maliciously and very deliberately trying to create outrage surrounding the term so that they can, push you further into and deliberately push you further into white identitarian politics, which is Nazi ideology. Concepts like the Great Replacement are immediately planted into that conversation so quickly, or concepts such as, why can't I say it? Why can't I say the N-word, for example? Okay? It never just stays at like, oh, this is like racism and hatred towards white people. Do you understand? Yes, an actual cracker company sent me this. Wheat Thins did. Kind of revealing that when white people cite examples of anti-white oppression, it's always a benefit. They're not a party to, as opposed to an action targeting them, affirmative action improving the condition of minorities in general, etc. Yes. Can we also mention how a lot of these people complaining about anti-white racism but refuse to stand up for BLM and other issues? Yeah, I mean, of course not, because it's because a lot of the people who make a big deal about the anti-white racism stuff is that, a lot of the people that make a big deal about anti-white racism, unfortunately, not every single one, but a lot of those people just care about either debating or just care about, creating outrage, and maybe even in more nefarious cases, trying to push a narrative that at the top of the hour there's a 3-minute ad break. And that narrative is true. However, if you no longer want to see those ads, all you need to do is subscribe, which you can do for $5 or for free with a Twitch Prime. By connecting your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account, you get 1 free Prime subscription a month. If you no longer want to see those ads, you can also get gifted a sub, like the 5 subs that Woke Moralist just gifted, allowing 5 people to no longer see the ads. Right-wing propaganda of this sort is very nefarious and sometimes very effective. Andrea Streeter, Aisha Esquire, thank you for the 10 of the subs. Andrea Streeter also brings up a really good point. It truly comes down to the fact that, yes, repeating mean words towards white people can definitely be annoying and bullying, but it stops there. If people are saying slurs towards black people, even if they don't know the history behind the words, it's there and it's racist. It doesn't stop there, and you're a fool if you think so. You are not going to find any examples of systemic violence that white people have been subjected to, because white people have dominated. And when I say white, I mean Anglo-Saxons and the Western world. That's why you have to like potentially travel to a different country to experience some form of discrimination. I'm sorry. Or you're going to have to talk about like South Africa, which ironically was an apartheid state until not that long ago. And even the remnants of that unfair distribution of wealth and equity still very much exists in South Africa, where white people, which make up 10% of the South African population, which, by the way, how do they get there? You know, there's a long history of that. We're not going to get into it currently. But the 10% of white people own 90% of the land, the most viable land in South Africa still. They're no longer in an apartheid state. And yet, the cultural and material remnants of said distribution and disenfranchisement on the basis of being black or being white still remains. Sick of these stupid Redditors. Only place these guys exist, I swear to God, who act like saying the big C is a slippery slope into white people slavery. It's hilarious. This community is a very white community. I am pretty fucking pasty white myself. Invictus 13, thank you for the 10 gifted subs. Asman tried using Japan as an example. Oh, this was pretty funny too. Remember, people tried to like make it seem like my statements about Japan was a indication that I do not take, you know, anti-white racism seriously, which is, yes, I am white and I did go to Japan. And yes, Japan is pretty xenophobic. They tried to clip me out of context on a joke as I am a white person. So to the average, to the normie, I'm sure when they watch me talk about this, they go, what? That's a white dude making a joke. But on a subreddit where you want to be as uncharitable as possible, you can turn around and make this argument that like Hasan is an anti-white racist. I'm white, bro. I'm fucking white.
They argue you can't be racist against white people because white people have more privilege and power. Well, yeah, but like nobody would say that you're not being racist if you go to Japan and India, where Indian people and Japanese people have all the power, and then you're racist.
In a lot of these places, by the way, they still do horrific, as a consequence of colonial culture. Okay, as a consequence of like colonialism, India is a great example of this, and you know, imperial powers interacting and subjugating these countries. Japan, there is still colorism. Like if you look at India, it's a great example. India is a great example. In India, they have infinitely more racist ass fucking ads, like skin whitening ads and shit. But once again, yeah, India has a caste system. Both your and Asman chatters are constantly stir shit between you guys. They clip you both to drive their thirst for drama. I know, I understand, which is why I always have the position, the secondary position, which is like, why you have to be mad? Because I think every single person deep down inside that is like on the content creation side that talks about this issue, all the way from XQC to Asmongold to whoever, kind of understands that, like, you know, it's not as severe. Everyone ultimately recognizes that there is a difference. There is a varying degree of discrimination. Okay? And the people that are like taking this incredibly seriously and not finding it to be like productive discourse, but instead like white people are under attack, they're going to be gunned down in the streets and be sold into white slavery. Okay? Those people are fucking freaks.
Racist to them, and then Indians or Japanese tell you to get the fuck out. That would immediately be racist. Everybody would agree that's racist. So if it's built off of a structure of power, then logically you would be able to be racist against people in other countries if they're the majority population. But you can't, because it's ridiculous. Again, the only real reason why people want to be able to...
I wonder which country maintained almost complete control over India, or which country wrote the Constitution of Japan, for example. Like, even in the examples that he's giving, when you look at the historical impact, when you look at like the recent and also not so recent history and the development of nation states in these countries, Western influence that is white ethnocentric is so prominent that it's impossible to avoid. Of course. And that's precisely why, even in those countries, when they have like xenophobic sentiments, for example, towards white people, and I wouldn't say that they do in India, but certainly in Japan, Japan is pretty xenophobic. Japan was also a colonial power themselves, yes, also true. That level of xenophobic discrimination, is still, it still lacks the oomph. Because the United States of America is the global hegemonic superpower. And whatever we say goes. Okay?
To do it is because they're racist. Just assume that the people that want to use racial slurs with the intended effect of them being used against that race of people in a degrading way, just assume that the reason why they want to do that is because they're racist. They argue you can't be racist.
Japanese did not treat the Chinese very nicely, for example. No, they did not. The sentiment that we have to do genocide, to prevent genocide happening to white people, is used as common excuse by fascism. The Nazis claimed they were doing self-defense against the German race. I know. That's why it's very insidious and very scary when people start talking about like defending the white race. Without realizing it, a lot of people lend themselves to and take on the battle with those who claim that white genocide is occurring. And you have to understand, one question you should always ask, one question I have for Asmongold is this, and everyone else, is this: how is white genocide happening? What is white replacement? Why is it a bad thing? Because once you start identifying that, once you start thinking about that, you start to recognize, oh, it's happening through miscegenation, which is now legal, no matter how much people try to, chirp against that too. It's happening because there is no more genetic purity in the white genes. Okay? Are we really ascribing Asmon believes any of these things? No, of course not. That's why I'm saying that no. He's singularly critiquing individual actions, not systemic ones. Exactly. That's precisely why I'm stating what I'm stating, which is that when you start defending white identitarian concepts, you very quickly, without recognizing, because you're refusing to recognize that like whiteness is power, okay, in the way that it is defined, it's an in-group that has the power. So once you start defending that in-group that has the power as something that needs to be defended, you have to recognize that, like, how do you do that defense? How do you engage in defending the white race? Who do you consider to be white? And I don't think Asmongold would be like, yeah, white replacement is real, or white genocide is real, and that we have to defend it by stopping miscegenation. You know what I mean? That's how that works. Wouldn't it be good to address the critiques of singular actors as bad in order to dismiss the arguments against what you're saying effectively? No. Because, like I've said time and time again, the fundamentals that argument lands on, the fundamentals that argument starts on, are false. It's a false premise that I will not take on as a genuine, real concept. Do you not get this? I'm not saying it's good to constantly shit on white people or whatever the fuck. I'm simply stating that I refuse to acknowledge that anti-white racism is a real thing. Do you get it? Because in order to acknowledge that it's a real thing, you have to acknowledge that there is a concept of white race, which comes from your genetic purity, and it comes from your lineage, not from skin color, by the way, because those who are like the true whites will always be able to shut off whiteness, not on the basis of your skin color, like myself, right? But on other factors, like, you're Turkish, your name is Hasan, you're no longer white. How dare you engage in anti-white racism? You yourself are not a white person. Do you get it? Because defending whiteness as a concept, given what whiteness is, power is a socio-political term that implies you have it, okay? What you are saying is true, but not everyone sees it that way. Well, what I say is true and not everyone sees it that way could be applied to a multitude of things I advocate for, but I don't stop advocating for those things because I believe them, and my entire goal here is to try to get people to engage with me charitably and develop a better perspective on what I'm trying to say. If you refuse to acknowledge it, why talk about it? Because I'm a political commentator, and this is a incredibly political subject, especially in America. For example, when we look at historic genocide, let's look at the Holocaust, for example. The Holocaust did not happen on the virtue of Jewish people not having sex. Okay? It happened because people put Jewish people in concentration camps. Okay? Bro, do not pause like that. He said the Holocaust didn't happen. Okay, guys, come on. Be serious. Be serious. Be serious. Be serious. Please. Please. Half of you guys are behaving in the worst way. This is a very serious conversation that we're having. Like, why do you lend credence to hate watchers by behaving like LARPing as hate watchers. Lecturing single chatters for 15 minutes at a time is so tiring, though, like yesterday. It might come across as tiring, but I think it's very important to address it. Most white people in the U.S. absolutely do not see themselves as a group. They have a kind of terminally corrupting individualistic view, which is why class unifying political movements are so fucking hard to get moving here. That's why it seems to miss the critiques of this kind of racist language, because the argument isn't that whites deserve protection, but all racism is condemnable. Yes. But anti-white racism as an individual action is nothing more than mean bullying. Anti-black racism, on the other hand, has systemic power associated with it. That's why if, for example, reparations were to happen, okay, and the racial wounds were truly healed in this country, and I don't mean by like affirmative action or whatever the fuck, a Band-Aid solution that is feckless and liberal nonsense. But true material restitution occurred, okay? And centuries of racial wrongs were corrected. At that point, and that's like such an unimaginable scenario that it's hard to even like create it in your mind, I don't think people would care as much about the N-word. You abandoned the analogy about the Holocaust? No, I didn't. The Holocaust happened oh God, I got to stop fucking pausing. Okay. Nazis threw Jewish people into concentration camps and systematically murdered them. They robbed them of their rights. They dehumanized them, okay, and robbed them of their rights in an interest to defend Volkish Germans, okay? Nazis in that regard, and the Volk was white. That's what whiteness was, okay? That's a real substitute for white in that situation. They said folkish, but that was white. Okay? Folk. Yes, other minorities and queer people and disabled people too, but for the sake of this argument, I'm using a reductive, a reductive description, okay? The Holocaust didn't happen on the virtue of Jewish people not being able to have consensual sex with, non-Jewish people. That's not how that happened. There is no real genocide when you talk about white genocide, because white genocide happens on the basis of white people, or whoever is considered white, which is a political term, having sex with non-white people, whoever is not considered to be a part of the group of non-whites. Okay? And the reason why I talk about this regularly, white people aren't real, question mark. We can't even get loan forgiveness. Reparations is a non-starter. True. White genocide is the existence of interracial couples? Yes. Yes, it is. Because whiteness and blackness in the United States of America are concepts that were created around power. Blackness, on the other hand, was utilized to dehumanize African slaves that were brought into this country. And it was protected with some rules that white people created, like the one drop rule, which is precisely why, like I said, no one looks at Barack Obama and says, that's a white guy. Okay? That's why they say shows are woke when they have non-white leads. Yeah. White people don't exist is your video I share the most with people, and it always blows people's minds. Yeah, there you go. If you want to understand this further, there's a really informative, very short 15-minute rant I had on this subject matter, and I think it really covers most of the things. But genocide is mass murder. How can this be murder? Exactly. It's hilarious to me that this is stuff a non-deranged society would be teaching to fifth graders, but you have to do it on Twitch to whole-ass adults. Yeah. Unfortunately, that is by design. Okay? That is by design. I know you spend a lot of time repeating points made in the past for new viewers. Do you think you change minds as a result? I think so. For every person that comes in here that agrees with all the other things I'm talking about, that gets very upset at me when they originally hear like a bastardized perspective that I have that I don't actually hold on to, but like is completely either A, clipped out of context, or B, really just butchered by an interlocutor. I try to have this conversation every single time and and demand, or rather beg, for charitability every single time, specifically because I think people will have their minds changed. And I think there are a lot of people whose minds I have changed, whether it be on transphobia, whether it be on even this issue. Which can't stop me from streaming. Oh, that's when I got banned. Yeah. I still think you're wrong on charter schools. Yeah, I'm definitely not wrong on charter schools. Wait, why'd you ban this guy? What? Don't ban this guy. Oh, you got timed out. The chatter was right, but it's also hilarious how many dudes my age are feigning outrage over the so-called white racism while also not realizing this is the first time in their life they've had to consider whether or not it exists because they never encountered it. Dumbasses. Yeah. I think ultimately this kind of conversation just moves us away, and it's incredibly stupid because it takes us away from things like healthcare for all, free education for all. And for all, I mean literally white people as well as black people as well as non-white people. Okay? It is a very divisive subject matter, and the only people that benefit from this are either the Nazis who want to do white identity politics, in the same way that SJWs, like the hyperventilating SJWs do, but this time they're doing it for white people. Okay? Or the wealthy capital owners that benefit from the working class dividing amongst themselves and infighting. It's a very stupid conversation. When it comes down to it, if you want to hear my perspective on it, however, I will always give it to you. You're confusing charter with private? No, I'm not. Charter schools are even more nefarious than private schools because they take public funds away from public schools in a way that private schools cannot. So charter schools are literally, like, actually the middle of the ground solution to cripple the public school system in this country. And they are unregulated. Yeah, let's make fifth graders racist. You mean white people are allowed to be prejudiced, but that's not racist? Well, black people take nothing personally. Okay. This is the other side of the conversation for insulin dependent. I think this will help you understand it a little bit better. Because you were in the chat saying like, oh, well, you know, people have no way of seeing this outside of a hyper individualistic sense. That's perfect. The N-word or anti-black racism is not about like one individual white person being individually racist to one individual black person or hurting one individual black person's feelings, right? That's why it's something that you have to discuss with historical context. Do you understand? I'm saying those white people who have an issue, not all people, but yeah, I agree. Do you get it? Because the moment that you look at racism as like individuals discriminating against other individuals, you are doing the Ben Shapiro argument without realizing it. That's why Ben Shapiro always says systemic racism does not exist. Hypothetically, only one person can be racist to another person. Individuals make up the system. Show me a racist person and I will defend against that racist person every day of the week. That is a verbatim Ben Shapiro take. Okay? Because the moment that you fucking turn around and start talking about racism on the boundaries of individuals being racist to one another, you are dropping the historical context that is the fundamental underpinning of understanding what racism actually is and what white supremacy actually is in the United States of America. That's why, that's why I talk about this so frequently and try to pull back the conversation to a productive place. I'm saying that is one small and less significant subset of racism, and it's self-destructive towards class unifying to say it's permissible. I've never said systemic racism isn't real and the primary damage of racism in our society. No, I'm not saying you say that. Of course not. I see both sides, Hassan. I'm just trying to point out some contradictions that I see. Well, I hope you understood that then, because the moment that I talked about this is a concept that should be educated in fifth grade, you said, yeah, let's make fifth graders racist. Learning about slavery, learning about white supremacy, and learning about black existence in this country from the perspective of black people being humans and not just slaves until the abolition is not going to make racists. Okay? The opposite, avoiding that truth, is what creates racists, because it creates a system of people who are completely oblivious to the realities of black existence. It's the exact opposite. Unless you're literally saying like, oh, wow, I can't believe we're going to start thinking about black people as like full human beings, even when they were enslaved. That's really making me feel for the slavers here. That's just a self-report. If anything, it'll make you non-racist, which is precisely the reason why a lot of people want to stop that and have very effectively stopped that from being taught in schools. Florida being a great example of this. And the more nefarious thing that actually ties back to charter schools is what Ron DeSantis is doing, for example. He's utilizing and weaponizing anti-CRT and anti-woke legislation to currently undermine the already crippled public education system in the state of Florida. This is a legislation that is passing through the state legislature as we speak. It starts off with anti-woke ideology must be stopped. Woke ideology must be stopped, and moves into public schools that have this kind of common curriculum is going to have their funds pulled. If your argument was cut and dry, we wouldn't still be debating this. Not a simple issue. You think? Wait. The argument is cut and dry. The reason why it's a debate, an ongoing debate, and not a simple issue is because we live in a white supremacist society. This society, this country, was built by slavers, white capital owners that wanted to preserve their power. And that attitude permeates through every facet of our existence, through every orifice. That is the reason why it's not a settled issue. And everything, basically, that I talk about, because I am, I guess, endlessly contrarian when we talk about a white supremacist capitalist organization of the economy, everything I talk about is not settled technically. People are always going to disagree with me. That's my job. My job is to try to get you to understand the opposing side. I have tried to personally show people the content to pull them away from the right, and your white racism takes push them further away, man. You are not changing people's minds by saying it's okay to hate them. I understand. And I know you are desperate to say, oh, optics in this regard. But you have to remember, some of these people, it's going to take a lot longer for them to recognize this. There are plenty of issues that I talk about that probably pushes people away, like transphobia. But I don't stop defending transphobia when people think, when people's immediate position is that like trans people are mentally ill and weird. That doesn't stop me from defending that perspective, defending that trans people deserve to live and be free. You know what I mean? Okay, stop. I said defending transphobia. You know what I mean. Fuck, man. Defending trans people. I misspoke. You fucking know what I mean. Shut up. It's going to push some people away, but it's also going to push some people away, but it's also going to get people to understand it. So Hasan has to be a white identitarian to bring people to the left. Isn't that paradoxical? Exactly. When we talk about racism, we never consider against whites in Brazil because racism is already an anti-black reference. I believe this is the greatest example of a power structure not yet bent to circumvent reality. As a white people don't deserve to be handled delicately when it comes to this issue. I don't think so. I think like you sometimes do have to appeal to the sensibilities of people. Okay? Which I try to do to the best of my ability. But there are certain lines that I'm not going to cross. You know what I mean? I do obviously try to cater myself, or I do try to cater to different types of audiences, but ultimately it doesn't matter because like when we talk about whiteness as a concept, when you try to remove systemic racism from that subject matter, and talk about like individual acts of discrimination or bullying, okay, and try to bring that conversation over to try to bring that conversation and a conversation about racism, which everyone, regardless of what the dictionary definition of racism is, when you talk about racism, everyone understands it as one thing, okay? No one is thinking about racism as like, oh, you're being mean to someone. They think about it with all of the historical associations with racism. Okay? So the moment that you turn around and try to individualize acts of racism while robbing it of the systemic implications, okay, that it is basically normalizing, is a moment that is a moment that you're capitulating and caving to the unfair and completely incorrect ahistorical right-wing framing of the subject matter. Racism is not being done in the way that people understand it. Racism is not being done at the individual basis. It's being done at the systemic level. It seems that BLM has just heightened racial tensions. Yeah, totally, man. Yeah. It's always black people that speak out for their emancipation that heightens racial tensions. You know why you feel that way? Because white is the default position. When black existence is being undermined through systemic racism, that's not considered heightening of racial tensions. That's considered regular, normal, everyday existence. You get it? At first, it was, let's talk, then it turned into, we will cancel you if you say the wrong thing. Black Lives Matter was never about canceling you if you say the wrong thing. It's about police disproportionately targeting and occupying black neighborhoods. It's about the racial disparity in the criminal justice system, where black people, 1 in 7 black people, as a matter of fact, are in prison. 1 in 7 black men are in prison or have been formerly incarcerated. 1 in 17 white people, on the other hand, have been formerly incarcerated or currently in prison. That disparity doesn't make any sense when you look at socioeconomic conditions and when you look at the similar proclivity towards crimes. People would rather live in the absence of tension than live with the presence of justice. Yes. The one pointing out the injustice is always seen rocking the boat by people who don't recognize that the boat was already upside down. Yeah, well, the boat is not already upside down for those with privilege, though. And no, I don't think canceling stuff is if you say the wrong things is legit just consequences. You can legit log off if Twitter is hurting you that much, especially as a non-internet celebrity law. No, I think that like people do weaponize canceling and cancel culture regularly, and it's not just done against like, oh, random white people that said the wrong thing. And it's not as earnest or as just as the way that other people try to present it. It's something that I would say is apolitical. Both sides, no matter what your political ideology is, regularly utilizes and weaponizes cancel culture. One of the greatest examples of this is literally the anti-white racism narrative that has been, shocking the Twitch sphere for the past month or so now. What do you think that is? Why is it that if I log on to LSF and I look at a random fucking conversation, let's play a game. What do you think this is if you don't think it's cancel culture? Let's look at a random thread on LSF, right? Before everybody fucking freaks out, I just want to point to something here, okay? Okay, here it is. XQC on Asmongold's take on racism. Let's click on the thread. First comment is XQC in a warehouse? Hasan, seeker of criticism, is having a really level-headed take on this Discord about XQC and Asmon's opinion. How dare people, checks notes, voice their opinions about disliking racism? He's not going to learn. He's going to keep being racist POS. Someone went into my Discord and decided to upload this onto the subreddit. That is exactly the same shit that SJWs do, where they look at private spaces otherwise, okay, or non-public facing spaces and try to, cancel you. That's it. Dog, they posted on the XG's Reddit too. Yeah, what do you think that's about? How is this any different than the supposed cancel culture that we talk about regularly? Hasan is simply a racist piece of shit. The idea that you can't be racist against white people is laughable and only perpetrated by racist cretins. But we all know Hasan isn't exactly the smartest guy on Twitch, so you can't really hold it against him. It's like when the mentally challenged people do something weird, no fault of theirs. Nah, bro. Anti-white racism is a free win card for POC. It's not your fault for insert anything you dislike here. It's the racist white people's imperialism. How dare you take some of your personal responsibility for your life? You can blame white people for all your problems. Easy. That's really interesting. There are still systemic problems in every country I know of with race, especially in the United States. And in the U.S., this was caused by white imperialism. I'm all for all racism is bad, but we can't ignore the racial issues in America that exist today. Black communities have been fucked and are still fucked. That guy only got 9 points. Luckily, there's some sane people. So just keep providing help to overcome these obstacles until when? At what point can we say that it's enough and they should take personal responsibility? This guy wrote a well thought out response to someone who said blacks are using anti-white racism as a win card. And of course he turned around and said, so just keep providing help to overcome these obstacles until when? At what point can we say that it's enough and they should take personal responsibility? Is there a gap between all races or just black? I wonder what this person's personal perspective is. It seems to be seeping through this conversation. Holy shit, I didn't know that. Is the common flu also racist? It did kind of kill most of the Native Americans. Like, notice how the conversation is just moving in every single direction because this person is only there to simply fuck around. You're just as bad as Hasan. No one with a brain, especially POC, will pretend that people can't be raised against white people. Hell, some whites are raised against other whites of different ethnicities. Anglo-Saxons didn't consider Irish, Hungarians, and Italians and others to be white. Wait, that's my point. That is my point. Wait, but he's saying I'm bad? But that's the point I make all the time, that whiteness is not necessarily something as tangible as like blackness, but instead a political tool that people weaponize. It just means in-group. Proximity to power, having power. Classic rhetoric is used by racist whites against minorities. Don't regurgitate it without getting some historical context as to why my responsibility isn't useful for solving systemic issues. No one is blaming you. No one is blaming white people as a group. People rightfully blame white imperialists and officials that created the current system that still benefits whites at the expense of minorities. If you defend that system, then yes, you're part of the problem. You'd think you would have some self-awareness when you tell others to take responsibility while crying about being the victim of those mean cults saying stuff that makes you feel uncomfortable. This guy gets it, and yet still is like, Hasan is an anti-white racist dumbass. Like, he literally compared me to the fucking guy who said black people never take personal responsibility. The mind of a fucking Redditor, dude. While using my arguments. He gets it, he just also hates you. Yeah. What a clown Hasan is. He really said white genocide is justified because people online cry about racism towards whites. Should be permabanned, but we all know he won't be. For your information, he said that bit about white genocide is a joke because white genocide does not exist. Did you miss the part where the only actual white genocide is fragile incels who nobody wants to fuck? He did miss that. White genocide is a conspiracy that Jews are brainwashing the populace into having interracial relationships, forcing immigration, etc., so that white characteristics gradually get bred out. I think this is what he's referring to in that message because it doesn't make sense otherwise. E.g., if you interpret white genocide to mean the systemic targeting and killing of white people, then his message would suggest that he thinks that it's happening now and that no one is wanting to breed with you has something to do with that. Some people get it. I mean, this is how Hasan is, to be fair. If it's even slightly nuanced topic that isn't cookie cutter, his brain melts. Totally. That's my issue. I'm the one whose brain has melted in this topic. When you, on the other hand, refuse to see the nuances of this subject matter and immediately go, oh, it's racism. So the reason why I'm showing you this is because the unfortunate reality is it's very difficult to see outside of the default position that you are conditioned into believing, because that's how it works. I see nothing wrong with what he said. He's white. If white is just a skin color, or is it just not a skin color? I'm so confused. Reddit tells me Hasan isn't white, but also don't make fun of people for their skin color. And if you do so, you're racist. OMG, I can't. Minus 31 points. He's fucking Turkish, not white. He yo-yo about being white whenever it suits him. I always say I'm white. I always say I'm white. The only moment where I'm not white is when I'm entering the country of the United States of America, where although I'm traveling with a much larger group of content creators, and this did happen, you can ask Valkyrie, Saikuno, March, and their agent, because when we were at the gate, about to enter the plane, the only person that was stopped for an additional search and put behind that little screen that they have right next to the gate was me. That was a moment where I guess I was not maybe perceived as white. I don't know. I personally didn't even recognize that was a thing that happened because I thought that everyone was always just, it happened to everyone. Turns out it just happens to me a little bit more frequently. Yeah. They're just looking for bomb residue. It's whatever. It's understandable. I still, however, maintain the position that I am white. So it's not a skin color. He's Turkish, not white. He yo-yo about being white whenever it best suits him. I'm white. I'm a white person. I am white. I've said I'm white every single time. All the time. Nonstop. You can solve this by identifying as white passing or white presenting. I mean, I mentioned that too, but it doesn't matter to these people because they change the concept of my whiteness whenever it suits them, while simultaneously claiming that I do that, which is hilarious because you're proving my point. So it's not a skin color. I thought it was because his skin's white. Go tell a Middle Eastern person he's white. Tell me how that goes. Technically, Turkey is Asian, not Middle Eastern. Well, in the Middle East is also an Asian Jesus Christ. That's true. Someone can be perceived as white by society, but not technically be white. Hasan knows this, which is why he likes to pick and choose what he is, depending on the situation. Nah, he doesn't pick and choose. He uses that society definition of white to talk about how whiteness is just as much as a concept as anything to do with skin color. The definition of white changes depending on who you ask. While no one argued the definition of who is black, because black is not only a skin color, but in America, it has history of slavery and indentured servitude and segregation. Gotta love suddenly anti-racist crew trying to do race science to try to say Hasan isn't white. There's an easy solution that solves all of this. Hasan is in the wrong. How? I'm so confused. Reddit tells me Hasan isn't white, but also don't make fun of white people for their skin color. And if you do so, you're racist. What about anything here is contradictory? It's irrelevant if he is or isn't white. It's still a racist view. Do you think Candace Owens can't be white, can't be racist to her own race? Love that. That's a brilliant argument. This person is now claiming that Candace Owens, a black woman who is a white supremacist, is engaging in the same kind of rhetoric that I'm engaging against the white race. Do you understand why these arguments are fucking idiotic? Because now you're calling me a race traitor. The reason why you can't make these exact same arguments about white people and they always get reduced to this kind of fucking insanity, okay, is because it's not the same. Anti-white racism is not and never will be the same as anti-black racism. It's best just to ignore Hasan and his community when it comes to slurs. I remember when he tried to justify people calling a gay white person homophobic slurs because they were privileged. He defends that here at 5950. Like, you don't think this is cancel culture? I don't even know what clip this is, but I'm suspecting that it's most likely about a trans person making fun of Pete Buttigieg and using a homophobic slur against Pete Buttigieg. A trans person. They had that clip ready. This is exactly what in 2014 and 2015, the right would constantly complain about blue-haired, hysterical SJWs doing. They're doing the exact same thing, but because they're doing it, all right, let's look at 5950.
No, I didn't.
Let's look at this.
The N-word or whatever the fuck gamers are talking about this
Well, Hasan literally defends Pete being called an F-word on fucking stream. That's rich as fuck, dude. Come on.
I
really?
said a trans person
so
a trans person making that joke is the literal is the exact same thing as like a black person making a joke about a white person calling a black person the N-word. And
Yeah. Called it. Yeah. But hey, while that is totally a reasonable perspective, okay, Nightmare Blunt scenario, by the way, not Nightmare Blunt rotation. Wow. While that in and of itself, when you actually look at the context, is perfectly valid of a sentiment to make, this person expressed it as Hasan defends a gay white person being called homophobic slurs because they were privileged. 539 points. Not only is the context of this completely untrue, okay, and it is a perfectly valid sentiment to express, okay, it is now turned into a conversation where I'm defending people saying the F word. Hasan is so incredibly condescending. Imagine thinking XQ and Asman couldn't have a principled stance on this topic. He posted this in r/Destiny and on numerous other subreddits, I assume. Wow. Seems like a normal guy. Asman subreddit had a meltdown over your Discord post? Yeah. Because while a lot of people, while content creators understand, while content creators personally understand that like allowing anti-white slurs to continue inside of their communities would create like a hostile space for onlookers, okay? They don't realize that defending this concept as though it's a serious one is making those communities way more habitable and way more open to psychopaths like this who have secondary interests. Secondary interests like, you know, oftentimes defending white supremacist values. Do you get it? Your haters are demented, dude. I don't know how these people have years old clips to use at any moment they hear your name. I'm going to go ahead and assume that they have like folders in their computers where they're like, this is a good thing where I can clip out of context. I will keep that in my hater folder. I mean, it's the same as, Kiwi Farms and 4chan. It's just, I mean, a lot of these people also congregate in those circles as well. It's what psychotic stalkers do. They're hyper obsessive and they don't actually have they don't actually have anything else going on. But because this is on the internet, you can't really tell how fucking mentally ill that person is. So you can like avoid listening to them. But the one thing you can't avoid is the top of the hour ad break. Because that comes at the top of the hour every hour. And if you no longer want to see those ads, all you need to do is subscribe, which you can do for $5 or for free with a Twitch Prime or by getting gifted a sub. CHSPAS. Thank you for the 5 gifted subs. This guy, I used to watch TYT when I was younger. Hasan wouldn't say any of this shit to someone in person either. Would love to see him do a charity boxing event, but we all know he'd never do it. Nice. It's best to just ignore Hasan and his community. Could have stopped right there. Yeah, it would be great if you ignored me and my community, but you can't. I would love for you to ignore me and my community, but you literally are doing the exact opposite of that when you go to every subreddit. Look at this. Hundreds of fucking upvotes on all of these psychotic fucking takes. That's easy considering the target demographic. Anyone hating black people, dude, it's just a skin color. Don't hate on skin color. That's not what people say when people are fucking hating black people. People don't hate black people on the virtue of their skin color being different. That is an idiotic sentiment. Anyone hating Asians, dude, don't hate them for their skin color. They're ultimately human like you. Asian skin color? What the fuck is this guy talking about? Hasan stands hating white people. Start repenting for the sins of your ancestors, you fucking snowflake. Did you know that it's okay to verbally abuse you and bully you because of your skin color? Haha, you cannot deal with bullying and humiliation. Snowflake, la la la, no purpose flower, lol. This is some Attack on Titan shit. This reads like a Fox News watching 45-year-old divorced dad. I'm not going to lie. Except this part betrays that this is probably, unfortunately, an even sadder person. This is the stupidest shit. There were people shouting this shit on Europe too and realized that there were white slaves here also. Fucking stupid how he's able to spit this hateful shit and doesn't realize it. He truly is damaging young minds with this. If he truly wants to stop racism, he should stop talking about white people's skin color. It just keeps getting people to fight one another. I don't talk about white people's skin color. Also, I myself am white and have white skin color. Don't worry, bro. Same people eventually saw this. Yeah, thank God. This guy is a permanent state of virtue signal 24/7. Uses weird fringe politics as an excuse to spread hate and division. The way he shuts down any debate or discussion and just lectures his twisted views as gospel is so pathetic. Is this discourse similar to men are trash discourse? Pretty similar, yeah. The men are trash conversation is stupid, okay? It comes from a place of trauma in many instances, but it's ultimately laughable, okay? It's laughable. There's no power. You're so brave for saying you're white. Apparently that's super offensive to some people, Lamau. Yeah. Getting unnecessarily butthurt and going crazy over men are trash discourse, okay, is silly. Why are they mad at Hasan this time? Because they are simultaneously in this endless position where I'm not white, but also that betrays the notion that like whiteness is a socially defined concept. So I'm being anti-white racist as well. Hasan and his community won't admit it, but they just think slurs are on if they don't like someone. Same justification as any racist group. Hasan tells a trans person, you're trans and you'll never understand because you're trans. Hasan is a major hypocrite on what he preaches. 24 upvotes. Where did this come from? No, Slight Fly says. He tells a trans person that because they're trans and they understand transphobia already, that his rhetoric around transphobia is aimed at people who are not trans and are transphobic. Well, he does tell lots of shit to trans people. You might be both right. Let's see what this one is. My issue as a trans person is the fact that you... Oh, the fucking Catboy Collector one. I love that. Hasanabi VODs, 48 subscribers. Hasan is really good at taking criticism. 7 months ago. I can't understand how Hasan got away with talking like this to a fan with the mildest criticism towards him. This person is still in my community. But yet, do these people know that? Do they care? Do they understand that this was not on the virtue of them being trans? I watched this and you made it sound worse than it actually is, lol. Destiny really managed to create the worst community possible. Racist and transphobic communities are much better. Better than one that justifies racism, homophobia, and transphobia against people it dislikes. As a progressive that goes against my values, I can't help conservatives like you. He said that a trans person can use homophobic slurs like how black people can say the anti-black ones. Awfully transphobic take. Not a gay person, a trans person said the F slur in a joke. Believe it or not, but transgenders and gay people are different. So it's not like a black guy saying the N-word as a joke. Would you be okay with Asians using the N-word in a joke? Wow. That's how you know the straight jumped out of that conversation. And that's the other part of it. It's always like language policing made by people who are not a part of that in-group. Getting mad at me, who's also not a part of that in-group, that's describing the genuine perspectives held by the in-group. Respect others the way you want to be treated. So if white people are saying they don't like the word and you aren't white, don't say it. Okay, well, I'm white. I don't hate Hasan, but I really hate his bad takes the most because whether he likes it or not, he represents the leftist take online for many people. Other streamers like Miz and XQC are expected that they say dumb shit as entertainment, but Hasan actually wants his opinion to be worth a damn. So now people are going to try to paint the whole paradigm of people as racist. Shit like this is so he can fit in with people who want to say slurs is particularly pathetic. I'm bi and don't take homophobic slurs from anyone, including trans people. Okay, good luck. Have fun with that. So, why did I read all of this? Why did I read all of this stuff? It's because I wanted you guys to understand. This is coming from the community whose highest upvoted post for years was a manifesto defending being able to say the N-word as a white person. I know. Why am I talking about this? Because a lot of these people come at it and do have the capacity to sometimes change the minds of others who are liberals, who are well-intentioned liberals, okay? But a lot of the people who make these arguments are doing it because they either, A, just love the blood sport, love debating people on the internet, okay? B, are doing it because they have a secondary reason for doing it, whether it be fucking disparaging me or specifically disparaging defending the concept of like white genocide or racist values of white supremacy. But why did I read this thread? Why is there so many mentions of Hasan in this thread? This is a thread about XQC on Asmongold's take on racism Twitch. Because this is exactly the same dumb shit that they fucking cried about with respect to social justice warriors. Why are there hundreds of comments on a thread about XQC and Asmongold talking about racism on Twitch? Do you get it? Do you understand? I wanted to help you understand. Because the topic is divisive? No. If the topic is divisive, stay within the boundaries of the topic. They're not in the boundaries of the topic. They are using this conversation that is continuing to, continue spearheading the narrative that is anti-Hasan in general. Or maybe sometimes pro-white identitarian politics. I don't remember which thread it was, but top comment on here was saying, we need to talk about black privilege. Yeah. So yeah, this Reddit has gone mass Nazi. They don't try hiding it anymore. Now, I think that this is a little scary because people don't want to have a productive conversation around it. Take that as a badge of honor. You are the lightning rod for a lot of these fucking racist losers. I know, but they didn't say that. They said black supremacy. Jesus Christ. Listen, every thread that gets less upvotes but still gets 300 comments. So I am a white South African currently in university. Currently living through the prejudice that whites face due to actions of our ancestors during apartheid is frustrating. The injustice towards the black race has sparked a hatred to continuously fuel racism towards us whites. Racism that is rooted in hatred and not justice. I don't agree with the opinion that we be punished or shunned for the actions of our ancestors. I am not a believer that you should be punished or shunned for the actions of your ancestors, first of all. I need people to understand this. I routinely make fun of dumbass people who are like, oh my God, I'm so sorry for being white. Oh my God. Or people that do the shit where they're like, oh, black person, please let me wash your feet. Oh, black person, let's talk about police brutality. I yell about those people as well, but that doesn't fit the narrative that a lot of these people try to present about me. They make it seem like I am like those people, so they won't show you the many videos I have of me making fun of people that behave like that. Oh yeah, let me go and give donate to Black Cash. I was like, that is not going to provide restitution. That is not reparations. Also, my man, your ancestors, like apartheid was around like 30 years ago, so that's a wild thing to say. Like your dad was a part of that. And if they did see a video like that, they would call you hypocritical? Yeah. So, my ancestors, my mom did stuff I have no part in. My ancestor is picking me up from school later. There's a non-zero chance that he was alive during apartheid. Yeah, I mean, I was alive. So, all jokes aside, I mean, here, roll that clip of Asmongold. Yeah, here. This is how these people behave regularly. Look.
$3 million. He lives rent-free. I don't know why Hasan even needed to buy the house for $3 million. He lives rent-free in, like, so many people's fucking heads. This is insane. I'm not even talking about Hasan at all. Like, I didn't even bring up his name. And like, people just, they can't fucking help themselves but give their opinion on Hasan. And, oh, he's a communist, but he's got a lot of money. I can't believe he wants to kill people. Like, it's gonna put me in jail. Oh, my God. Why do you know this? Why do you know this? You clearly don't agree with him or like him. Why are you consuming content about him? Why are you thinking about him? What's wrong with you? Like, you're spending all your time thinking about a person that you don't like. This don't you see a problem with that? Doesn't that seem like an issue? I don't know.
They cannot keep you out of their mouth, bro. They're glazing you up like a Krispy Kreme donut. Play Valorant. Yeah. So, yeah, there are a lot of people who do that. You had a clip from the Andrew Schultz podcast. Pop the fuck
A lot
off.
of people have credited you for Andrew Tate choosing to remove all of his content from social media. Really break that down.
He was on this 17-year-old Fortnite stream. He was doing the rounds. He went to like Aiden Ross. He went to Clix's stream. He's like going up against like these like 20-year-old kids and just basically farming their audience of like dummies. Like all these like 12, 13-year-olds were like, oh, I love Fortnite. And oh, this Andrew Tate guy, he seems so cool. He's got a Bugatti. And basically he was like getting all of them involved and invested in this like thing he called Hustlers University, the MLM scheme. And I saw that and I was pissed off about it. I was like, what the fuck are you guys giving this guy free promo? He was doing that. And then like Clix's manager is a fan of mine and he like hit me up on the DMs. He was like, bro, you want to come on the stream? And I was like, yeah, I want to do this. I want to talk to this motherfucker.
That was a great podcast, but if you're gonna think about people you hate all the time, at least get paid for it. Like, yeah. So anyway, we talked about all of this specifically because like these guys are doing the same exact shit that like they claimed that SJWs were doing. They have no like. They have no intellectual honesty or consistency, and in many instances, they're not going to ever be charitable. And yeah, there's not much I can do. But when there's a swarm of voices like this on the internet that are spending all their time and effort and energy in like writing fucking, writing insane threads about how racist I am. It's hard. You know, some normies are probably going to see that and go, maybe this Hasan isn't a good guy either. Now, I still don't get your take. Is he wrong in your opinion or not? Who? You don't need to be a hater to enjoy debates. Yeah, I mean, but it's I don't like the toxic mentality that a lot of people who are debate enjoyers have. Oh, as far as Asmongold's opinion, I don't know the entirety of his perspective, but if he's like talking about whiteness as a concept, as an institutional concept that must be defended, I mean, I've said it already. He would be wrong, but I don't even think he believes that. I think he's talking about racism as individual actions. I literally had a friend who called you racist when I mentioned I'm subbed. Yeah, I mean, I don't really care when people say that because ultimately it's silly. My brother really thought you were a super racist that hates the world. Had to show him like 50 clips to change his mind. Hasanabi, don't buy that debate lovers have a problem. I have seen it. Yes, debate lovers do have a problem. Debate perverts do not see the human impact of the things that they advocate for. They think it's just a matter of like back and forth conversation as they reinforce. It's not just in threads about you. Look at any post mentioning a person that's not white. The sub is compromised. Oh yeah, I mean every subreddit ultimately turns into this. Dog, I thought this was the thread about your Discord log. What the fuck? TSA consistency. Hasan, if you see this, bring back Donnie. For weird. What the fuck is this? Why do you have a reputation as a debate bro? I don't know. Because most people don't really look too deep into things that they consume on the internet. I don't even fault them for doing so. And they just think that like because I have done debates and still sometimes do debates, very rarely, they consider me to be a person who is simply in it for the arguments. Yeah. They specifically label your threads as open, racist, and bigot. Hasanabi says blah, blah, blah. They do it to ruin your reputation with actual normies. I wouldn't be surprised if T-Pain got tricked by one of those. Yeah. Yeah, there's a deliberate reason why people do it. As someone on the dirtbag left, I can't stand the semantics of actually not racist against white people. I love when someone labels themselves as a dirtbag left and then does white identitarian politics. Sure, I agree it's not the same thing because of XYZ, but as we continue to have conversations around race and changes are made to promote equality, at what point do you say, okay, racism against white people is bad now? It'll never happen because that behavior will be too ingrained. Bro, you are not a dirtbag leftist. You are literally a fucking weird internet loser who found a bunch of people who say the word retard, and you were like, oh, thank God, they're like a little bit edgy. So, and they want healthcare, and I think I want healthcare too. So now I'm fucking, now I'm on board with this brand of politics. Most people would fucking laugh at you. Just so chatters know, Hasan has been saying this about debates for 4 years.
People in Destiny's community know your position. If you keep getting stuck on it so much, it shows that you seem triggered, therefore losing in the marketplace of ideas, which, by the way, is also indicative that, like, most people's understanding of debates are fucking idiotic. Further evidence that debates are not good for arriving at the truth and just simply about overwhelming your opponent rhetorically.
That's it. Yeah. It's all about rhetorically destroying your interlocutor. It's not about arriving at the truth. It's stupid. It'll never happen because that behavior will be too ingrained. It's unproductive and will only push people to the right when you constantly say you can't be racist against white people. And actual white nationalists love this, which is why I'm defending the same sentiment that actual white nationalists love defending here. Because, hey, guys, if you keep hurting my feelings, I will become a white nationalist. That's all you're saying here. It's so silly. You're literally saying, like, well, you're pushing me, you're bullying me, I'm going to become a white nationalist again. What are you, threatening people to be like, you're going to be a fucking white nationalist? You can't be racist against white people, and actual white nationalists love this because it validates their identitarianism and victimization rhetoric. No, when you're talking about white people as anything but like a political grouping, a socio-political grouping, you are literally doing, without realizing, white identitarian politics. They're threatening to digivolve into a Nazi. People who are otherwise sympathetic to matters of equality and inequality will feel othered and alienated by the constant shut up is different when it's done to you, as if it's on a personal, individual level. It magically removes the negative impacts of prejudice based on race. As someone who regularly talks about trans issues, black issues, issues that pertain to every facet of American existence and global existence, I get relentlessly and endlessly critiqued by clout sharks, by trans people, by black Twitter, okay? That does not change my mentality. What do I always say? You have to have a moral compass that is unshakable. I'm not in this game so that, like, black people will like me or trans people will like me and say, oh, thank you, sir. Thank you for defending our rights. You are our hero. You are the king. I don't give a fuck about that. Okay? I'm in this because it's just. Okay? I defend the principles that I defend, not because I want black people to think I'm really cool, but because I think black people deserve dignity, equality, okay? Just like everyone else. This notion that, like, this idea of, like, you're lucky I'm not a white supremacist is a silly fucking take. That's good because there's a trans girl on Twitter right now who's mad at you for using the word chaser as an insult against Sneeko. Exactly. Other trans people don't even agree with that that sentiment. It happens. Who cares? And I tell this to my community all the time as well. Anyway. Not only that, but it's a pretty powerful recruitment tool. There's nothing appealing about being a white nationalist, but they can point to this rhetoric and say, look how much they hate you. Yeah, if you legitimately think that, like, people that say the word cracker unironically hate white people, you are already predisposed and conditioned into agreeing with white supremacist rhetorics. I myself am white. This community is overwhelmingly white. most people in this community, if not almost every single person in this community, would not immediately get recruited by white nationalists because of the concept that we're discussing. Exactly. I've been seep into the normie political social media nowadays because it's such effective propaganda that those now spreading it don't realize where it originated. I've had this conversation with so many leftists who obsess over identity politics. It's so short-sighted. Bro, you are doing identity politics, but not recognizing that you are doing identity politics because you're doing identity politics on the basis of whiteness. That is identity politics. But you don't recognize this identity politics because whiteness is about power. It's the default. Do you understand? I hope people can be as charitable as possible when I talk about this and try to comprehend what I'm saying. Identity politics doesn't only pertain to non-white people, okay? You are no different than Gamergate-brained dipshits that say, oh, this game is real political when there's a black woman that is a main character. Do you get it? Why is it that it's only political when there is a black person that is like one of the main protagonists? I agree with your takes. I think you should be more vocal about how you are literally white. Under that light, the ridiculousness of the discord against you becomes super apparent. I have been saying that. That's why they always say, oh, Hasan picks and chooses when he's white, which again proves my point. It's like the same people that were saying, Hasan, why don't you always like talk about people who yell about your consumption purchases? It's like, I talk about it all the time. You just don't hear. Also, be more vocal. Look at me. Like, look at me. Only people who are profoundly weak and already predisposed to white supremacist rhetoric can be bullied away from morality, okay? You see a bully at the playground, okay? Two kids are fighting. Let's say the victim of the bullying turns around and says something mean to you. Do you now decide that bullying is okay? Like, that's silly. If you want to think about it from like individual anecdotes, no. Why would you decide to no longer hold on to convictions that you have because the other person whose rights you are defending didn't understand your perspective and maybe turned around and made fun of you or maybe turned around and criticized you? It's stupid. That means you did not have convictions. The right hates you, the liberals hate you, the left hates you. You're really getting the shit end of the stick. People don't realize the positive impact you have overall. It's okay, because plenty of people do. Many in this community do. And if I am capable of changing people's minds when they come in here, even if it's to hate or even if it's to understand, when they come in here and hear me out and their perspective is changed, not only on myself, but about the things that I talk about, then it's worth it. Of course, it's terrible for my mental health, ultimately. It was it was wonderful when I was in Japan because I wasn't talking about this sort of stuff. So it didn't draw so much ire. And it was great. And that kind of content that is not inherently political is certainly one that I can make for the rest of my life and still maintain a fuckload of popularity, perhaps even because it has a larger ceiling, a higher ceiling, maybe become even more popular. But I choose to do this because, this is what I love to do, and this is what I think is important to do. This is what gives me fulfillment. I'm not gonna lie, this shit is exactly why it's so hard to get my black family go more to the left. Black people get a lot of shit smeared on them in the left, and people really don't talk about it. The idea is black people need to fix our attitudes before we are worthy of help is incredibly hard to take seriously when these people are talking about onboarding people concerned about anti-white racism. Yeah. Your interest in emancipation should not be conditional on the personal behavior of the group of people or some representatives and the way they treat you. You should be stronger than that. I know it doesn't feel great. I myself have been criticized and attacked and smeared relentlessly. I mean, go back to the fucking Barb's saga. That does not change my perspective on anti-black racism. That does not change my perspective on systemic racism existing in this country, because those are facts. That's real. You get it? It's unconditional. I believe my cause is just. So I'm able to, while it hurts my feelings, not change my perspective. And I hope one day that people like Asphyxiate can get there as well, if they truly do believe themselves to be on the left. But it's very difficult. When you say things like, oh, I'm not doing identity politics. I hate when people do identity politics, while simultaneously doing white identity politics and not recognizing that that is still identity politics. The lack of recognition surrounding white identity politics being identity politics is the point that I'm trying to make. I've never watched you before because the circles I was in labeled you as a bad guy, and I decided to watch to see what all the hate was about. It took watching to realize how many takes I agree with. People just hate to just hate. Yeah, and most people don't have time. They're not going to take time out of their days, and they want other people to give them the cliff notes. And if the cliff notes about me are overwhelmingly negative because it's shit clipped out of context, it's positions that I do not hold that are being misrepresented, and you can certainly have that. You can certainly create entire essays on it, okay? When I'm speaking for 10 hours a day, the cliff notes are going to be bad, and people just see that and go, oh, fuck this guy. I wrote him off. Anyway. Not only that, but it's a pretty powerful recruitment. They hate us because they ain't us. They will just say if the word cracker turns you into a Nazi, you always were one, ignoring all other influences of context and be done with it. I mean, I've been called a cracker more than these people have, and I haven't turned into a Nazi, so there's got to be something else going on there, I think. So, yeah. A lot of discourse surrounding these things are unproductive, breeds confusion, and creates fertile ground for charged actors to either astroturf and make an already confusing rhetoric even more unhinged or recruit people you've needlessly alienated over. It's such a menial thing to argue about, too. Is the left doomed to only have a win in certain pockets of the public and online with little actual policies and material change being made? God, I really appreciate threads like that one. It gives me hope. It's wild to witness both the left and the right talk about corporate corruption, the death of the middle class, elites who abuse their position as I. Okay. I can't read the rest of it. It's just too long of a debate. All right. Let's get to the Nord Stream pipeline. I think the left should start fucking having more civility. Yeah. I think they're just stating that people are fucking dumb and don't think about politics or race politics in this country. And to be honest, most people just diverge into hug boxes where they don't have to think about it. Conservatives are very good at hug boxes. It sucks. Yeah, I agree with that. But if you are a leftist, why do you spend your time, and this is not something I do, unless it like reaches a certain point, why do you spend your time shitting on people who are ostensibly on your side? If you're scared of Nazis recruiting people, then you should be literally talking about how whiteness as a concept is basically socially created as a mirror of who has power in society. Try to understand the nuance of whiteness. And not fall into the right-wing framing of this argument by immediately saying, oh, well, the dictionary definition of racism is this. I want to believe that you truly are anti-racist. And if you truly are anti-racist, then you should understand that a lot of racists are using this rhetoric and this framing and step away from it.